Hi everyone, welcome to Money and Me podcast by the Coin Republic. Today I have with me yet another super interesting guest from the Web3 space. I have Bobby Lee. He's the founder and CEO of Ballet, and we'll know all about Ballet and his interesting and illustrious journey in the crypto space, which spans almost a decade now. So, Bobby, I'd love to know you started off as a crypto miner, and now you're, of course, an entrepreneur, a founder. If you can talk about your time in this space, how it began and where you are now.
Sure, absolutely. So I started in crypto in Bitcoin actually in 2011. So that's almost 14 years ago. In about early 2011, 14 years ago. Time has gone by pretty fast. A lot of things have happened, and most people who started in Bitcoin that early, at some point or not, they mined Bitcoin because in the early days with Bitcoin coming out being invented, being released in 2009, 2010. There wasn't much to do. There weren't any crypto applications. There weren't many places that accepted or allowed payment. So we were sort of we as in the early people were uh, helping bootstrap the whole sort of Bitcoin ecosystem by helping with the mining effort. And as you know, Bitcoin started with zero, and in a it released 10.5 million bitcoins within the first 4 years, and then another 5 million bitcoins in the next 4 years, and so on. And it halves every 4 years. So we're now, I think, just shy of 20 million. We're at 19 point something million bitcoins released in the world, and through this effort called mining. And we yeah, so it's been fun. That's how I got started, and then I eventually also I was living back in China at the in the days in so I went to China in 2007, I think, and then by 2011 started mining Bitcoin in Shanghai, and then started a company, BTC China. I was co-founder and CEO, which was the very first and largest Bitcoin exchange of its time back in China. And then today, I'm running Ballet. I'm the founder and CEO of Ballet. So we started this company 6 years ago. So I sold BTC China in 2018, and then I started and founded a new company called Ballet. We make cold storage cards for cryptocurrency, and this company has been running for 6 years now. Yeah.
So, Bobby, you've earlier spoken about the role of Bitcoin, how Bitcoin can be a hedge against the system. What exactly do we mean when we say a hedge against the system? And have you seen Bitcoin's role change um, over the last decade that you've been around?
Yeah. Um, Bitcoin, I'm not sure if I said it was a hedge against the system, but
Mhm.
Bitcoin it is a solution, or it's an attempt to fix something that's very broken about human society, which is the topic of money. So so I was born in 1975. Uh, I was young at the time, but the 70s were high inflation times in the United States. Uh, and And also something very important happened that year. I think it was 1971. Richard Nixon took the U.S. off of the gold standard. Um, what that means was prior to that, more or less, gold was the backing of the U.S. dollar, and in it, and subsequently it was because the U.S. dollar was the backing of most foreign currencies. So the world was operating on a money system of currencies, that is, paper money, US dollars. At the time, there wasn't a euro, it was all individual countries like the French franc, the Italian lira, the Spanish peso, the British pound, and so on. And countries, the rupee in India, the renminbi in China, many, many Japanese yen, Deutsche Mark. So all these major and minor currencies were interlinked with the US dollar through an exchange rate. And the US dollar itself was tied to gold at a fixed exchange rate. At one point it was $20 and then became 25 and 30, $33. So throughout the last century, that is the 1900s, gold pretty much maintained a strong link to the US dollar up until the 1971 when the US dollar came off of the gold currency. And again, prior to again, you know, before the 20th century, so before the 1900s, in the 1800s and before, gold and silver were used as money, right? That's how you have in the very old days. That's how you have. If you think about the sterling pound, why is it called a pound? It was exactly 1 pound of silver, and and then eventually the silver dollar came about, uh, and that was the U.S. dollar. So $1 was worth 1 ounce of silver, and then $20 was worth one ounce of gold, or roughly thereabouts. Okay, so we had the silver dollar, the gold standard, the U.S. So my point is, throughout human history, for hundreds and thousands of years, human society and commerce, again, we're talking about trade and commerce, economy, was based on exchange of goods and services using money, meaning gold and silver. But the notion of what today we very well know, the concept of fiat money, the terminology has a derogatory term. And the reason it has a derogatory term, fiat money, is because it's declared by fiat to have value, and it's unlimited printing, unlimited issuance. And we've seen many countries and their economies go bad because of hyperinflation through over excessive printing. And it's all linked into budget deficits, including what the U.S. is going through: budget ceilings, budget deficits. And many countries today, the most extreme example is like the Zimbabwe dollar that went through hyperinflation multiple times in the recent 20, 30 years. We've seen, the Weimar Republic, the German Deutschmark before the World War, that has become worthless, and other currencies that have added a lot of zeros haven't quite become worthless because they've added a lot of zeros at the end. Okay, so my point is, the fiat money system that we know of today, that is unhinged rather, I think that's the right word, unhinged from the gold and silver real assets. We've seen them go haywire. So back to Bitcoin. Bitcoin was invented by Satoshi Nakamoto. It was released in 2009. In fact, we just celebrated the 16th anniversary of Bitcoin's issuance into the world. The first Genesis block was captured and mined on January 3rd of 2009. So the point is, Bitcoin is a solution, is a technological solution. Again, uses a lot of the latest software, internet, peer-to-peer, all those technologies, decentralized technologies, blockchain. And the idea is to make an improvement on money, because the money we're using today has a huge problem, is that it loses value over time. So it's kind of awkward, right? Imagine you go to the doctor. Usually when you go to a doctor, they ask you they put you on a scale to weigh you, and they also measure your height in centimeters or inches or feet and whatever. They weigh you in pounds or in kilograms, and then they also take your heart rate. They measure your blood pulse, heart rate, how many beats per minute. So imagine if these three numbers will change drastically over a 10-year, 20-year period. Not because the human physiology has changed, right? Not because you grew taller, or that you have gained weight or lost weight, or that your heart is beating much faster, but rather because the units of time, the units of length, right? The number of seconds in a minute, or the number of minutes, however natural time is measured, the units of the length, such as meters and feet, inches and centimeters, and the unit of mass and weight. If those units, the scale changed over a course of a decade and 20 years, then we could all be 7 feet tall and 2 meters and 3 meters tall. We could all be 500 and 800 pounds, and we could all have heartbeats of like 600 beats per minute, right? And that would sound crazy to you, but with money, that's exactly what's happening, right? When your parents and your grandparents, wherever they lived, let's say in the United States or in any country, however much money they earned in a day, a month, and a week, in a year, why is it that we earn much more? Is it because we're so much better than them? Or is it that the money we're earning is actually worth much less and therefore we earn more to make up for it? And vice versa, why does food, rent, and other lifestyle choices cost so much more in dollar terms today than it did when your grandparents and my grandparents grew up? Why is that? Right? We're still
Yeah.
humans in society, and this reason it's more expensive today is because money is worth less. And the
Mm,
notion of the shrinking dollar is we just take it for granted, but I think it's crazy. So with Bitcoin, the idea was to issue it with a fixed amount
mm,
uh, and make it truly free to everyone. That's what they mean by free to use, open standard, decentralized, no censorship. Um, the idea is to give people a choice that if I want to save my money in a quote unquote currency that doesn't inflate and devalue, then maybe Bitcoin is a good choice. So
mm.
clearly, by looking at the Bitcoin price that recently crossed 100,000, I know it's
Yeah.
down today under $100,000, but the point is, over the last 14 years, I've been in Bitcoin, and over the last 16 years that Bitcoin has been around, it's clear that Bitcoin has had quite some success in that
Mm.
effort. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think that you've in quite a detail mentioned about how Bitcoin is a great store of value. When we talk about ownership, Bitcoin and blockchain tech, I definitely believe has changed the way we looked at ownership. If you can talk a little bit about that, and I've seen that in multiple interviews, Bobby, you've spoken about the importance of self custody. So, if you can talk about ownership of assets and tie that with self custody in today's time, that would be
Yeah.
great.
The other thing about Bitcoin is considered a digital bearer asset. So digital, well, first of all, people understand Bitcoin to be a digital cryptocurrency, right? A cryptocurrency, a digital cryptocurrency. For short, they call it digital currency. Now, these are not legal terms. Obviously, I think very few countries recognize Bitcoin as a currency at all, whether it's a digital or a digital virtual or digital cryptocurrency. So again, not a legal term that's recognized by countries, but rather by people who use it, technologists, just people in society who understand Bitcoin to be a digital cryptocurrency. But more technically, from an economics perspective, from an economics perspective, Bitcoin is considered a bearer asset, and it's considered a digital bearer asset. Now, what is a bearer asset? Uh, the answer is things like gold and silver are bearer assets. Diamonds, gold bars, we've mentioned gold coins, diamonds, jewelry is a bearer asset. The idea is an asset is, let's take a step back. What's an asset? An asset is anything of value. Now, there are a lot of real estate people who think of assets as just real estate, and real estate is considered real asset. It's kind of weird they call it real asset, as if other assets are not real, but that's just a historical terminology. So, real asset, real estate, commercial buildings, residential buildings, homes, land. It's real asset, things in the physical world. Okay, now, there are other assets, like if you drive a car, if you own a car, a motorcycle, or even a bicycle, that's an asset to you. You own it. And some people own airplanes and yachts and all that, bigger things. And then other things like the clothes I'm wearing, that's something that belongs to me. So you could call this an asset as well. It's just not worth much. But if your clothes has a designer clothing or has a lot of diamonds and whatever sewn in, then that could be very expensive, a shirt or a dress, right? And jewelry are also assets. And people consider their red wine collection assets, even their cigars. People have their own stocks, right? A lot of investors own stocks, public stock market, whether it's New York, Europe, London, or Hong Kong, whatnot. And then people own treasury bonds. Bonds are corporate bonds, government bonds, treasury bonds. Those are also assets. So there are a lot of different assets in the world. And assets is basically anything that's worth money, you can call it an asset. And some are depreciating assets, some are appreciating assets. We won't go into that. But the point is, with assets, you then come back to how the asset is owned. Okay, so most of the larger assets and most of the non-tangible assets, like stocks and bonds, money in your bank account, including real estate, they're all titled assets. That means you own those assets in the way that the government recognizes, because the government has a system through databases and paper records that say you, Varuni, or me, Bobby, we, or individually, whatnot, we own that asset. It's titled to my name. Even like an airline ticket is tied to my name, right? So that's a titled asset. And then a bearer asset is something you and I own that is not tied to, that's not written down, registered. So my shirt, for example, or even these headphones, even the watch, right? In my room, like the printer you see in the background, those are more like bearer assets. So I have it, I own it. If someone came in my house, broke in my house and stole the printer, and they probably take it away, and well, it's probably going to be their printer. Okay. Same if someone steals this, bearer assets can be stolen. Titled assets, if titled assets are stolen, there's a way for law enforcement to recover it for you. Okay. So no one can steal the house, so to speak. Even if they have the key to the house, they could break into the house, but they can't steal it. I mean, unless they're bringing a big truck and move the house elsewhere, but that's something very complicated. You can't steal land unless there's fraud and stuff like that. So back to the point, a bearer asset is something you quote unquote hold yourself that is not registered. So Bitcoin is a digital bearer asset. So even though most people don't think of they can hold Bitcoin, but with Bitcoin, it's a bearer asset. What it means is people can own it individually without having to register title ownership of it. Whereas for real estate and for stocks and bonds, for bank account money, it's not a bearer asset. You have to have a name tied to it. And then in your death, when you pass away, then the government has a system where they then, estate how that money or how that asset transitions and transfers to your spouse, or might transfers to your children and descendants. Okay. So it's good that you give me a chance to talk about this, and I hope your audience appreciates it. But Bitcoin is a digital bearer asset, and why is that important? Why did Satoshi Nakamoto create Bitcoin to be a bearer asset? Is because of a concept that most people don't understand. Earlier, I said, for example, titled assets, no one can steal it because it's controlled by the government, the registration and so on, right? So no one can like when a bank robber goes in and robs a bank, what do they take? They take cash. They don't say, "Oh, please add $1 million to my account here at Bank of America," because you'll figure out later that's useless, because if the bank manager just increases the account balance for the thief in the bank balance, the moment the thief walks out the bank manager can reverse that transaction and then and remove the $1 million from the account. Okay. So same thing, when a thief comes into a home, they don't steal the home, they steal the things inside the home, because that's what can be taken away. Okay. So the point is, when you think very deeply about this, it is the things that you can take away, the things that are really have value. Basically, if the thieves don't want it, this thing doesn't have much value. The short end of the story is. So that's why thieves all over the world are getting smart. They're stealing Bitcoin, right? There's a lot of hacking, a lot of theft of Bitcoin. Okay. That's also why thieves steal cash and gold from banks. Anyways, so we're just getting to the topic of bearer assets. Yeah. Oh, and then the importance of self-custody. So with Bitcoin, it's a concept. If you own the Bitcoin, if it's truly yours that you purchased, my personal preference and my personal recommendation is you should own it truthfully and
Mm,
fully and have custody over it. You should hold and control your own Bitcoin. Because if
mm,
you rely on a company, on an institution to custody it for you, then something can go wrong.
mm,
Specifically, the company can get hacked. The company can be fraudulent, and then you'll find out you may not own that much Bitcoin after all because something went wrong with the company. And the notorious examples in the early days of large custodial exchanges are like MT Gox in 2014. They went bankrupt, right? They got hacked in 2012, 2013. They went bankrupt in 2014. Recently, we had um, in
yes.
FTX a few years ago. FTX, many exchanges got hacked. Many go bankrupt. Some don't. Some stay around. I think Bitfinex stayed around. I think Binance stayed around after they got hacked. But for example, in India, I think you live in India. If you do, the Wazerex exchange in India got hacked. Some Korean
Mm,
exchanges got hacked. So almost exchanges, almost everywhere in the world have been hacked and have gone bankrupt, have shut down. So
mm,
I ran BTC China and BTCC, ran it for from 2013 on, and I
mm,
was very lucky. We were very lucky. We ran that well, and then we sold the company. We never got hacked or had to lose
well, got
money.
yeah.
Yeah. So, but having done that, I've realized that it's very tough running a custodial exchange.
Mm,
So that's why I now refuse to work at an exchange or launch an exchange or start an exchange, centralized exchange, but rather I want to start doing something which is to help people with self custodying their crypto assets with their Bitcoin. And then that's why I started Ballet to solve the problem of creating a simple, easy to use cold storage self custody solution where you
right.
can hold your own Bitcoin. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Bobby, if I can ask you, what motivated you to move from building an exchange to moving on to something like ballet? What was that one
So
pin?
so so no one told me. First of all, no one told me to do it. Um,
Sure.
and secondly, it wasn't like the next step. I think a few events happened. I think in sequence, we got acquired. So we got acquired in 2018. Uh,
Mm,
the China business actually got shut down by China, and we couldn't run in China. And then we had an international business that got acquired in 2018, and then
mm,
and then we sold back the Chinese business back to the co-founder. So, excuse me.
no worries.
So that was, in hindsight, a very fortuitous sequence of events. I was able to exit that, um, and then and then so for the rest of 2018, I was out there giving speeches, doing some consulting, and then by the end of 2018, I discovered, and again, it didn't seem that long ago. Now it's already been over what is it, 2018 to, yeah, it feels like, what is it? That's 6 7 years, right? So um, what happened is I real okay, 2018 seems like a long time ago now in 2025,
Yeah.
but at the time it felt like, wow, it's so new, right? But the point is that crypto's been around for so long, quote unquote, but 9 years at that point. But the point is that it turns out, even though there was more adoption, much more adoption in 2018 there was compared to 2014, it turns out the reality is the world has not really embraced and started using crypto. And part of the reason is crypto's too hard. So that's a reality. Like I'm a computer science graduate. I'm a geek. I'm a nerd. I'm a technologist. I love high tech stuff. I love a lot of gadgets, and I've run an exchange. So I'm a crypto Bitcoin geek, right? But the reality is that most people won't know how to do proper cold storage, how to do proper self custody. At the time, again, this is in 2018, the leading cold storage solutions were hardware wallet devices that look like USB sticks with a cable you plug in. Some have batteries you charge. Some have Bluetooth, NFC to connect to your phone or to your computer. And some were software wallets that were on your computer, on the phone, that you download, that you update, right? And the idea is that these solutions, whether software or hardware, would somehow protect your private key. Um, but either they don't do a good job protecting a private key because they're connected online to the internet through a computer or mobile phone that's always on, or they're not always on, they're disconnected, but it's too darn hard to set up and configure. Okay, so I had an episode where I purchased a bunch of hardware wallet devices from a very well-known company, and I gave them to my colleagues at BTCC, BTC China, and many of them couldn't figure out how to use it. Okay, that's a true story. It was too complicated. So what I ended up doing is I had to run a seminar, essentially have a workshop, like a 2-hour workshop, and I brought them over and said, okay, let me teach you how to do this properly. And I taught them how to set it up. These were BIP 39 seed phrases. These are 12 or 20 words, 24 word seed phrases, how to back it up, how to create it, how to set it up, how to install the miniature programs on the device, how to update it, how to, set up the online wallet system so you can view the balances, the blockchain balances, and then finally, let them, put in the coins and so-called store it safely, right? So I realized cold storage, self custody was too hard, and I decided that I needed to create, an opportunity existed for me to create a company and create a product, more importantly, that was much easier to use. So I got together with a bunch of my uh, ex-colleagues at BTCC, BTC China, and then we created Ballet, the founding team. We started that in early January of 2019, and our key product is this wheeled series cold storage card. It's a stainless steel card, and this one is actually very nice. It's gold plated, so it's 24 karat gold plated, and it's got some special markings and things. Basically, this product allows the user, the purchaser, to store Bitcoin and over 1,000 different cryptocurrencies and NFTs on this product. And when they store it here, it becomes a physical bearer asset. So not just a digital bearer asset, but it's a physical bearer asset. So if I put $5,000 or $500 worth of Bitcoin on here, even if I put one Bitcoin, that's $95,000, $100,000. Then the Bitcoin metaphorically resides on this card. Okay. But the reality is Bitcoin sits on blockchain. And what this card does have is the card has the credentials to access the account on the blockchain that contains the account that contains the Bitcoin that I own. So this card would metaphorically contain the Bitcoin. And as long as I don't lose this card, then I cannot get hacked. I cannot lose my Bitcoin. And that's the notion of self-custody. And that's what's really special about Bitcoin. Because with any other asset class, like stocks, banks, you could get your assets freezed. Banks can disallow you from using your own money or making wire transfers, and they can do all sorts of things, right? Even real estate that you own, banks can have sorry, not banks, but rather governments can have policies where they disallow you to sell your real estate or have very high punitive taxes on your real estate, where you feel like you can't sell it, right? Or you can't buy because you're not married, or you can't buy because you already own a home. In some countries you can't buy more than one home, for example. In some other countries you can't buy a home because you're a foreigner, right? So there's all these rules that they impose on assets that are what they call titled assets. So I classically tell people, what's the difference between a movie ticket and an airline ticket? Like an airline flight ticket is tied to your name, but if you go to movies in the US, at least, you pay for it, you get a movie ticket, and that movie ticket you could give it to your sister, give it to your mother, or give it to your friend. Someone else can watch a movie with you or in your place. There's no rules around that, right? Whereas an airline ticket, you can't. Once you buy an airline ticket, it's registered in your name, and you can't transfer that to another person, right? Without paying some fees and so on and so forth. So, anyways, so the importance of bearer assets and the importance of self custody. Yeah.
Absolutely. I do see that you've, of course, worked a lot around the ease of usage in this space. And I feel that the ease of usage, or how difficult it is to access crypto or to understand how to work around cryptocurrencies has been a big issue around scalability. And entrepreneurs in the Web3 space have been endlessly talking about scalability, bringing the next million on board. Bobby, what do you feel are the key barriers to true scalability and adoption in this space? And how do you think you're working around it as an entrepreneur with Ballet?
So there's several dimensions to it. It's not a single dimensional answer. There's several dimensions. So what I'm doing, what we're doing at Ballet is we're making self custody easy. We're making safe cold storage self custody easy, right? There are a lot of self custody solutions that are mobile phone app based. There are over a dozen or whatever number of apps out there that allow you to store your crypto on your mobile phone, on your smartphone. You download the wallet, it's stored on your phone through private keys and BIP39 passphrase. And the way you tell is if the wallet asks you to write down these 12 words or 24 words to safe keep it, the backup, then that's a custodial hot wallet on your mobile phone, on your smartphone. And there's desktop versions. Okay, there's even web versions built into web browsers. Um, there's also, again, the hardware solutions, the hardware. But what's good about them is they're not always connected to the computer, so they're less risk of being hacked. Right, the mobile phone. If someone steals your phone, if someone tunnels in and gains online root access to your phone, you are lost. You lost those coins, and many hundreds, not just hundreds, thousands of people have lost money that way. Okay, tens of thousands, maybe even. Uh, so what we're doing for Ballet is we're saying, don't store your own self custody coins on your phone because that's dangerous. Now it's okay to store small amounts, but for amounts larger than $1,000 or $10,000, don't leave it on your phone. Don't leave your NFTs on your phone. Don't leave your project coins. Don't leave your Bitcoin. Don't leave your critical, massive stash of digital assets on your phone. But if you only have like $100, maybe you leave it on your phone. So be it. Okay, it's all about your risk tolerance level. But rather, put the large amount offline in cold storage that you control, which is self custody, and that's Ballet. What Ballet has made is we've made a cold storage self custody solution that requires no setup. And that's amazing. There's no setup. So even you, your parents, even your grandparents, or your children or your grandchildren can use this very easily because they just buy this, they verify that it's made from Ballet, and you can scan it in our app, and then you can store coins on here, Bitcoin and over 1,000 different other coins and NFTs, and you're done. Okay, no setup, instant use. Okay, now the other way you mentioned about ease of use for the market is actually something recent happened last year, early last year, 2024. ETFs. So ETFs in the United States, over a dozen ETFs got approved for Bitcoin. Finally, we've been waiting for over 5 years, right? I actually wrote about it in my book that was published 4 years ago, predicting that ETFs will be approved, and thank goodness they got approved. The prediction came true. But the point is that with ETFs, you're not self-custodying your Bitcoin. Okay, that's the reality. You're not self-custodying. You're letting the ETF fund manager custody it, right? They're a custodian, or that rather they outsource the custodian to a proper custodian. Okay, but what's good about ETFs? It does make it easy, which is allows for normal people who already have money, whether it's investment money or retirement money, in existing stock brokerage accounts. Okay, it allows them to more easily buy, quote unquote, buy Bitcoin and get exposure to Bitcoin's price appreciation. Bitcoin is very, very volatile, the price, right? On the day by day basis, it goes up hundreds or thousands of dollars. It goes up percentages, much more volatile than stocks and gold. But at least over the long run horizon, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, Bitcoin price will appreciate. That's my personal opinion, not investment advice. But if you do want Bitcoin exposure, then ETFs are an easier way to buy. You don't have to transfer money to an exchange, set up an account, do KYC, and then withdraw the Bitcoin onto cold storage or whatnot. So you can bypass all that by buying Bitcoin on ETFs. So again, it's a multifaceted way in terms of how we as industry players make Bitcoin easier and more accessible. right? Yeah, those are just two very large important examples.
Right. If we talk about the current regulatory climate, global regulatory climate, how is that affecting adoption, if at all? And do you feel that the environment would change in the years to come? If so, what are your expectations from regulators across the globe?
Yeah, that's a great question. So my comments are this. So the world is a big place. There are over 200 different countries and jurisdictions around the world. And as I've, I'm 49 this year, turning 50 very soon. And as I have gained wisdom over the years, something you don't necessarily learn in grade school or even high school very well, very deep, is the world is a big place in the sense that there are many different political systems, many different types of government. Okay, whether it's a constitutional republic, whether it's a democratic country, whether it's a more authoritarian leader, a communist country, whether it's a dictatorship. There's a whole range of government styles, like parliaments, elected Congress, to full democracy, to anarchy, to again, we have totalitarian, we have dictators and communists, government, whatever range. Okay, so I say this is important because in the end, humans, there's over 8 billion, 10 billion people on Earth, right? Unfortunately, we as human beings, individually, me and you, not all of us get to choose to live in the type of country and type of government we want. Okay. So there is a huge sort of birth lottery. If you're born in the right country, you're better off because you're in a better system that either because you like, or it's because it's more fair, quote unquote, or it's because it's more effective for you and your people. But on the other hand, if you're born in the wrong country, then you are, you know, some people might say you're enslaved, right? As bad as it may sound, you're enslaved, you're locked in, and people who are born in the wrong country fight for their lives to leave that country and move to a better country. Okay, I don't want to get into politics too much, but that's how the world is. Okay, you have many countries, and then of course there are countries that are poor with a low standard of living, and there are countries that are rich with a higher standard of living. So I'm fortunate. I'm right here in the United States, in a country that's considered a wealthy country that has high standard of living, that's considered democracy. It's a good country. I like it. And by the way, I moved here as an immigrant. I'm an immigrant, first generation Asian American, first generation American, and my parents and I, we actively chose to become citizens of the United States. But whereas many other countries, either you're born in it, you never left, so you didn't choose, or worst cases, you were born in quote unquote the wrong country, you're trying to get out, you're trying to immigrate somewhere else. Okay, why do I say that? The reason is it comes back to the government style. Okay, I talk about citizenship, birth lottery, but it comes back to the government style. So in a in my opinion, there are some government styles that are pro people, that are pro citizens, meaning the country is run by people who are elected by its citizens, meaning the people, I don't know what the expression is. They serve, they run, they set the rules, right? They set up the constitution. It really is by the people, of the people, by the people. And there are other countries where the rules and the government system is done arbitrarily based on people who are in power. Okay, so those are more like authoritarian, totalitarian, dictatorships. Some communist countries fall into that category, some but not all. So why do I talk about these again? So now we have two broad categories. We have freedom, democratic countries, elected governments, elected officials, versus more totalitarian, at the extreme, dictatorships, authoritarian, and again, some communist countries fall in this category. Okay, these two categories, this style, it's empowered by the people. So if the people want something, this country will more or less eventually give the people what they want because it's in the people's interest. Whereas this style of country, it's the government's interest, it's the leader's interest, whether the leader is called the president, whether it's called a leader, a dictator, or the czar, whatever. In here, it's them, it's their interest. Now they'll say, oh, they're doing it for the people, but the reality is, if the people want change, they may not get the change because the leader doesn't want the change. Okay, whereas with this type of country, the change will happen as long as the people want it. Okay, so I strongly believe the United States were in this camp. And I mentioned these two camps is because in the end, for something like Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, it's about what the people want. So in these countries, if the people want it, it'll become legal, it'll happen. And that's why we're seeing adoption and pro regulation coming up in Bitcoin in the United States. And countries like the United States will take a leadership position because our system of government, of elected representatives, elected presidents, if the people want it, then it will set in motion, things will happen. Now, it might take a long time. The SEC was very much against crypto for many years, but finally the tide is going to turn. Like I said, the ETS got approved last year. Now we have a pro Bitcoin president coming in, the Donald Trump, right, coming in again. So it's very exciting to be living in this country at this day and age. Okay, I may disagree with Donald Trump on some other issues, but I love the fact that he's pro Bitcoin, pro crypto. Okay, we did not get that in the Democrats when Joe Biden was in office, for example. Now, in these types of countries, the classic examples like Russia, Iran, North Korea, China, even, tough luck. If you live in these countries, if you like Bitcoin, tough luck, because you'll never vote that into power. You'll never be able to convince your leaders that Bitcoin is good for the people, because in the end, the leaders make the decision. And if they might say one thing and do something different. They might personally benefit from Bitcoin and Bitcoin mining or Bitcoin exchanges or Bitcoin whatever, but they might outlaw it for the rest of the country. And that's what we see in this type of category of countries. So regulation, again, you asked about regulation, and this is the way I explained it. Took me a few minutes, but this is the background of regulation. So it comes back down to, is a regulation, are you referring to countries that are more or less democratic elected, that those countries will eventually have good regulation of crypto in the way people want it? And on the other hand, if we're talking about these countries over here, then regulation will be erratic, right? We saw erratic. So I spent many years in China, and we I mean, if you've been around for Bitcoin and crypto for a long time, you know that China was notorious for having banned Bitcoin multiple times in the last 10 years, right? So China banned Bitcoin again. It's like become a joke now, a meme. Like, oh my gosh, China has banned Bitcoin yet again, right? So even Russia banned Bitcoin, but yet now there are talks about them using Bitcoin for to counter the sanctions and all that stuff.
Hmm.
North Korea is notorious for banning Bitcoin and crypto for its citizens, but the North Korean government-sponsored, state-sponsored hackers are also notorious for mining Bitcoin, for stealing Bitcoin, hacking Bitcoin, and selling Bitcoin in the black market, right? So it's kind of this dual-face thing. So sometimes they say one thing, sometimes they do something different, right? Yes, it's
Hmm.
fascinating. The world is a big place.
Absolutely. And these are definitely exciting times to be around, as you rightly said. As we're running towards almost the end of our session, I think my final question, Bobby, to you would be that you've already been here for about a decade. You've written a book which rightly predicted ETFs, and you know that this space is always excited about new predictions in the market. So, what is your view of the market? How is it going to progress? Any interesting technologies that you're eyeing in, let's say, the decade to come or the next 4 5 years? As well, I think if you could end with any key advice for beginners now, with of course the ETFs in picture, Bitcoin at above 100K, there are a lot more beginners who want to enter this space. So any key pieces of advice for them as we wrap it up?
Yeah. So so I am a Bitcoin person. I consider myself Bitcoin maxi. Obviously, there are some people who are Bitcoin maxi that don't think I'm maxi enough, but but nonetheless, I'm very much singularly promoting and supporting, advocating for Bitcoin. I am very optimistic. I have a good percentage of my wealth and assets, invested in Bitcoin. Um, through a variety of different models. And um, I'm very optimistic. I've been in Bitcoin for 14 years now, and I can safely say I have more trust and faith in Bitcoin today than I ever have had in the last 13 plus years. Okay, so I think my faith in it will continue to go up as Bitcoin's price continues to rise in the coming years and decades to come. I truly think Bitcoin will become the solution for money on the planet Earth for humans. Okay, what I mean by that is Bitcoin will be the de facto global reserve currency. And then when governments issue their own national currencies, which governments should be allowed to issue their own national currencies, I think those currencies will have to have some backing and some anchoring with the global Bitcoin uh, stash. In essence, Bitcoin's going to be sorry. In essence, dollars and money will be backed by Bitcoin. That's my ultimate prediction. It might take many, many decades for that to come true, but I think it's happening. Okay, I think it will happen. So I'm very bullish on price, and we'll talk about that quickly. Um, when I was younger, earlier in this career, Bitcoin hitting $100 was a huge event. It was Bitcoin was in the single dollars and went to $10, $20. I got all excited, called my brother, "Hey, Bitcoin hit $23 today," and this was like March, April of 2013. Okay, um, uh, and before that, it was like $7 or $5 when I got into Bitcoin. Um, so so when Bitcoin hit $100, oh my gosh, Bitcoin hit $100, and then a few months later, Bitcoin hit $1,000. Amazing, right? So only if we could relive that, and then of course the next milestone was $10,000, and finally, many years later, we crossed $100,000. At this point, obviously we celebrated, but in some sense, in some sad, perverse sense, I wasn't as excited that Bitcoin hit $100,000 as I was when Bitcoin passed $1,000. Okay, so for someone who saw both, I was actually more excited Bitcoin passed $1,000 than I am for Bitcoin passing $100,000. And the reason, obviously, Bitcoin passing $100,000 means a lot more for us who own Bitcoin. But the reason is more, it's kind of like now I kind of expect it to, right? Whereas when it passed $1,000, to be honest with you, we were all new in Bitcoin, just 2 or 3 years, 1 or 2 years, and we didn't know Bitcoin could pass $1,000. Our conviction wasn't that strong 10, 12 years ago. And today I can safely say, for me at least, speak for myself, my conviction in Bitcoin is much stronger today than it was 10 years ago. And that's probably why Bitcoin is at $100,000, right? And in fact, I fundamentally know Bitcoin will go to $1 million and go to even higher, $5, $10 million. And people around me ask me, "That's crazy. How could Bitcoin go to $10 million?" And I say one simple thing. All I have to explain one simple concept, and they get it. And what I tell them is the only way to stop Bitcoin going up is to stop the printing of fiat money. If the United States or the European Central Bank or any country, Japanese yen, Indian rupee, Chinese renminbi, Russian ruble, if any country promises and actually stops inflating their currency, then Bitcoin measured in that currency might not go up as much. Okay. And then when I say that, they're like, "Oh, Bobby, you're that's silly. The U.S., the Federal Reserve, the countries will never stop printing more money." And I'm like, aha, that's exactly why Bitcoin will keep going up in price, because Bitcoin is fixed at 21 million. So that's why it's very simple, right? whether for the rest of my life, whether for the rest of the lives of my children and grandchildren, right? Bitcoin price will continue to go up if you measure it against fiat money. And the simple reason is they're just printing more fiat money, right? What used to be millions is now billions, and what used to be billions is now trillions, and what used to be trillions, what is now trillions, will be quadrillions down the road. Okay, so there you go. So if you think the price of a hamburger cheeseburger, if you think the price of an expensive steak meal will stay the same in 50 years from now, well, then Bitcoin price may not go up that much. But if you think the price of cheeseburgers and a steak meal will go from $3, $5 for a burger, and it'll become $50 or $200 in 20, 30 years, then the Bitcoin price will go up a lot. And you know, I warn you, I think burger prices and food prices will go up a lot in the coming 20 and 30 years. Not because the food is better or more healthy, but rather because the money is worth less. And that explains everything you need to know about why Bitcoin is, quote unquote, the greatest investment of our lifetime. Because we're measuring in this funny thing called fiat money that is shrinking in value.
Yeah.
Right. So in terms of, for new people, you know, I wrote a book. It's right there in the corner there. It's called The Promise of Bitcoin. It was published in 2021. It was meant to be forever, what they call evergreen. So meaning that even though, you know, it's 3-4 years ago, but the concepts in the book, it's about Bitcoin, the promise of Bitcoin, the future of money, and how it can work for you. Published by McGraw-Hill. You can find it on Amazon. You can find it in 3 formats. You can find it hardcover print edition. You can find it in audiobook version. You can find it in Kindle ebook version as well. So you can get on Amazon anywhere in any country you are. It's in English only. Actually, that's not true. It's in English in several countries. Several countries have had translations. I can't keep track of what the different translations are, but yeah, it's a great introduction. It's really non-technical introduction to Bitcoin. Why Bitcoin is great. It captures some of the topics I spoke about on this podcast interview with you today. Yeah, it's been fun. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about this.
Well, thank you so much, Bobby. It was rather fun, and the way you've decoded a lot of things for me as well as our audiences, I'm sure that this is going to be a fun interview, and I can assure you that everyone who
Yeah.
watches this is going to enjoy watching you talk about Bitcoin at length. Truly shows how passionate you are about technology. Um,
Yes.
and and with that, I would like to urge anyone watching to go ahead and read Bobby's book. I am going to. It seems like a really interesting thing to go around. So, thank you so much once again, Bobby, and all the very best with Ballet. I hope that the vision and mission that you have behind Ballet um, will truly be a reality one day.
Yeah. And then for the rest of the audience, if any of you want to check out our products, it's ballet.com. Ballet is spelled like the dance.
Mm,
Uh, it's BALLET.com. Yeah,
right.
check it out.
Before actually I wrap it up, why Ballet? Why the name Ballet? I think
Oh,
it's and
the name
let's.
is so I come from old school internet days, and I always want
Mhm.
to pick a very good domain name, a .com domain name. These days, people don't care; they pick .xyz, whatever, .ai,
Mm,
.io. But I like the .com, and I want to find a .com that was truly like a natural word and not a made up term. Like in our industry, crypto, there's too many company names. I won't mention any that are very geek names. Okay,
right.
so geeky, so like not memorable.
Mhm,
So I want to buck the trend and pick a name that was natural, that was allow for brings a sense of elegance to it, and
mm,
something that we can own the brand because, for example, ballet is all about the classical ballet, the dance, the ballerinas. So that's something that's not financially related. So now we can own that sort of moniker for crypto and finance. Ballet.com. We have the domain name, we have the brand trademarked. Yeah, and the product has done very well.
mhm.
We've received many patents for the technology, this open source, the open standard technology for the ballet cards. Yeah, so I hope you guys like the name and come visit ballet.com.
Absolutely. Thank you so much once again, Bobby. And